Good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this latest episode of the Indica Books Writers Workshop with Otis. As the name suggests, this is a panel, this is an avenue for budding writers to send in their writing pieces, short writing pieces, 800 to 900 words approximately in length. To Otis, you can find instructions on the Indica website, and also you'll find these instructions on our Twitter handle at Indica Books. We meet once a week on Sundays, and what Otis does is two things. First of all, he will ahead of time share his comments and notes back to you in a PDF via email, and then when we meet, he will take the piece, he'll share some of his thoughts, his comments, and you as the writer of the piece can get to ask him questions. You can clarify your doubts, and others who are taking part in the session, they can also see what the feedback is, what writing that feedback is about, and essentially make this an interactive session. So ask questions, and with that, I'll turn this over to you, Otis.
Okay, thank you. Abhinav, right before we went on, we were talking about our weekends, and Abhinav was saying that it was busy, but he got a chance to do some reading and writing, and I think I've said probably many times I write every single day, and so I strongly encourage it. If you don't write every day, I will once again make the plug for writing for 5 minutes a day. There's nothing that cures writer's block more than just sitting down. All you have to do is sit down, type for 5 minutes every day. And then when you're done with 5 minutes, raise your hands up in the air and say, I'm done. And now you can go on with the drudgery of your normal day. Okay, so yes, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But your day was successful because if you're a writer, this is something I don't know where I got this from, the MFA program or something. Writers write. Okay, writers write. It's not writers publish, right? That's people who are get to the point of publishing, they publish, but writers, we type, and that's our business. So I really encourage you to do that every day. And then I also wanted to with Abhinav and I, we're obviously writing quite a bit, but getting that chance to read, writers also read. So I thought it actually might be useful for us. We could maybe we can spend just a moment. Do we do it today? Maybe we'll do it next time. Next time, I want you please to just type into the chat what you're reading. So we'll all put into the chat what we're reading, and so we can share that. I mean, I think it'd be kind of interesting to see, and I'll put into the chat what I'm reading too. The next thing is we're gonna have Ram's piece up. So we're gonna make Ram, you're gonna be the guinea pig for this one. So I do also want this to be more interactive. Obviously, everyone sees and you've heard, that I can just get going on a topic, and I'm endlessly interested in this sort of the psychological intricacies of how language works on the audience. I don't know why I'm strange that way, but I do want you to engage more. And I sort of, I want us all to start incorporating some of the things that we talk about. It may be a little bit like we don't incorporate those things because I talk so much. It's information is always coming this way rather than some other kind of engagement. So what I thought that moving on into the future, I do want everyone to read from their piece. And I would like you even to think about and prepare reading what you think is the best part of your piece.
And I agree. I think I totally agree because, not to interrupt, not to interrupt you, but I think I will use the fact that this is a Zoom session, so there was a lag. So therefore, I started talking before you and finished speaking. No, the I wanted to make 2 points. The first one is that yes, I think see the intuitively, I think we kind of recognize what and where our weak pieces are, and typically we do tend to get feedback on those. Especially, say for example, if I were to submit a piece to you, I remember once you pointed out that my point of view was everywhere. There were like 3 characters in the space of one page, each of whose point of view was being represented, and that was very very disconcerting, and that got me thinking, and I made some changes. But often enough, I think it's also to get feedback on what we think is our is the best part, best section of that writing, because not everyone may necessarily agree with it, and I think that's totally okay. Not everyone has to think that what I think is my best piece is really the best piece, but I think getting feedback on that is also important. And the second one I was going to say is, and then I kind of modified it, which is that to make this interactive, right, you should be willing to push back on certain pieces that you think are dogma, pieces of advice that are dogma. So if you don't agree with the point of view, if you don't agree with the show don't tell, you should be, you should push back on it. There's nothing sacrosanct in what is being said here, but with one caveat, which is first, understand what point of view is, where it is used, why it is used, where it works, where it doesn't, firstly. And second, read up on what some of the more accepted, more popular works in writing have done. And to that end, in this chat, I will share a Twitter thread of some of the books that I have read and found useful in parts or in whole. So just make that effort. Just don't come as a blank slate, so to say. We have had 66 sessions of this series so far. So almost everything that you can think of asking has probably been asked before.
And definitely everything that's been said has been said before. That's the bigger key. But the truth is, I say a lot of these things over and over. It might seem that I'm so altruistic, and this, person who's given over to teaching. I say it over and over again to remind myself, because I actually know the process that I say these things over and over again, and yet I don't do them. So, like, I think there's something in the nature, I extrapolate that there's something in the nature of the writer to not take on, if we're talking about these rules, not take those things on. We resist those things because they're difficult. I mean, I think one of the biggest psychological truisms is that every human being is conflict avoidant. We all are. There are not people, there might be people you say, well, that person gets into fights all the time. That's because they're avoiding a different conflict that they don't want to be involved in. Their movement towards this conflict is to avoid something else they don't want to look at. So I think it's a truism of human beings. And I think all animals, finally, that we are conflict avoidant, because that's not a positive for our survival. Stories are about conflict. We have also all gravitated towards writing, which is a very peaceful, solitary, endeavor. And that is conflict avoidant. We've done this, and then we reflect that attitude in our work. However, what readers are interested in and engaged by are these conflicts. So I think that that's something to think about. The other thing that I want to say about reading our pieces is that this relationship of we talk about rules, and I'm saying that the rules are really coming from audience, right? The audience is the one making the rules. And when I say the audience is making the rules, I mean that their brains are making the rules. Okay, the way that they react and interact with language, that's where our rules are coming from. When they have multiple points of view, the human brain feels confused, because multiple points of view is not the way we live our lives. We live our lives in simply one point of view the entire time we're alive. And yet when we read something with multiple points of view, we're like, we're confused. It doesn't mean that we can't do it, but it means that we have to think about the fact that the human brain will be confused by this. So what can we do to avoid that confusion? Avoiding confusion in our audience is probably our number one goal, to create some kind of clarity in our writing so that our writing can be as clear as our experiences of life itself. So this idea of the cycle coming from the audience, if we come out and say, this is what I think the best part of my work is, right? I'm reading my work and I'm saying, this is the best part. What I believe we'll find is that we are exactly like our audience. We like the same things that every other human being likes. We like those moments that are engaged, that have clarity, and that reflect some kind of conflict, because that engages us. That's what I believe. I don't think that the writer is different from the audience. I've heard a lot of writers say, talk sort of disparagingly about the audience. They don't understand my work. They're foolish. They don't understand what a genius I am. That's bunk. We are exactly like our audience. We are the same person, basically. We have the same human brains. We react to language in the same ways. And I believe that we can discover that. So Ram, let's start with you. Let's see, share. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share this. No, I'm not going to share that. Well, I'm going to share this. I'm not going to share that. It's my email. Believe me, you don't want to look at my email filled with all of the junk. Okay, Ram. So you're being taken a little bit by surprise. This is Pillar versus Woman. I might just direct us to your new piece. Can I do that, Ram?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Because I have something unusually clear to say about it, I think. Where is your new piece? Oh, here we go. Okay, tell us a little bit about this piece, and then if you can pick out the section that you think is, about 100 words, so not overly long.
Sure. I wrote this one day when I was writing this to explore a different kind of a genre, which is horror writing, and I tried this, and this was more like an experiment. I could have polished this, but it was more of laziness at not being able to do that. I know like a dozen things which are wrong, but two things that you said, that those were very very enlightening. So yeah, this is this is not a piece I'm proud of.
Oh no, you be proud that you wrote it. Be proud, and there's plenty to learn from, and there's also plenty to. I actually even think it's good too to say, okay, well, maybe some parts of this piece are not working, but here's a part that I think is good, and this is why I think it's good. We need to give ourselves some of this positive reinforcement, and this was definitely true of me in the MFA program. The first one I went to, my graduate school before Stanford, there were these writers and everyone was praising their sentences. I was like, I don't know even why that's a good sentence. They were talking about their arena and their characterization. I'm like, I don't know what any of these things are. I don't understand. I guess they're amazing. And that made me feel very bad. But what I did was I held on to, for myself, something that was good about me. I was like, but I think I know people's psychology better and that I work harder than they do. Neither of those things were true. Okay, not true. I'm telling everyone here, admitting not true. But very important that I grabbed onto those things and believed in it. So even though, while accepting though, so what we do then is we say, okay, I have this strength, we claim it, let's continue to work with that strength, right? But then let's also recognize the strength of all these other people. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes, they're writing great sentences. People are saying so. I don't know why. I need to learn that. I need to figure that out because, at the end of the day, I want people to choose to give their life over to reading the story I wrote and not to read the story that they wrote. I mean, there's thousands of people writing. So, it's just a dynamic event. So Ram, yes, read a part of this. There's plenty of this that's really great.
You are very kind. So should I read from the beginning here?
Sure.
Oh, you want me to start from the beginning?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of wanted to try and get you to pick out what do you think is the best part of this.
Oh, okay.
And read that.
All right. Then let me open it on my screen and. Okay, I'll read the beginning part. I'll read the beginning, maybe part.
Are you sure you don't want to read the end, Ram? I'm not trying to lead you here.
Okay, all right,
sure?
I'll read the end. Whatever you think is works.
Okay. Good.
All right.
But can we read the part where the bus comes in? Where is that exactly?
Yeah. Okay, we'll read that bit. Okay.
Oh, right here.
Yeah. One cloudless day. One cloudless day when the sun beat down hard, Joey sat watching from behind the window. The vampire would arrive any moment. He kept his eyes fixed on the shelter, but it was his ears that picked up something. It started as a low rumble that progressively got louder. Was the vampire bringing her relatives? Joey was scared and excited at the same time. He would finally be able to tell the kids at school that he had seen something. Soon the source of the racket came into view. It was a bus. Spewing clouds of black smoke, it ambled along, like the frogs that crawled on thick slush. The paint on the bus was faded and coated with dust. The sign on its side read Route 13. Mom, Joey cried. Look, the vampire has brought her relatives. Mother stormed out of the kitchen, a ladle dripping gravy in her hand. What nonsense! She stopped. The bus crossed their porch. She grabbed Joey's shoulder and muttered, May the Lord in heaven save us. Her hand on his shoulder turned cold. The bus shuddered to a halt. Joey saw two men and a woman waiting for the bus. He hadn't seen them arrive. Where had they come from? They were dressed in rags, and it looked like they hadn't seen a wash for a while, neither the people nor the clothes. The bus had stopped a little ahead of them, and they walked slowly to get in. First the men, then the woman. Just before she entered the bus, the woman stopped and turned around. She looked at Joey. Mother gasped and covered Joey's eyes with her hand. The image of the woman, unkempt hair falling down her dark face, black eyeballs and exceptionally white eyes staring into him, seared into his mind. Just before Mother closed his eyes, he saw the woman's lips part in a thin smile. That night, Joey had a severe stomach upset. He threw up all that he had eaten since morning. The wretch in the toilet bowl was green-black. Mother wrung her hands and looked at Father. Father looked at the calendar and shook his head. It was Friday the 13th. Should I continue?
No, that's great. Okay. Ram and anyone else, why is that so good?
Oh. I was about to say why it doesn't work.
Yeah, so I don't want to hear that, Ram. I'm closing my ears and humming.
Okay.
Ram, you.
What is it that you've written at the side on the left margin bit? Comparing? No,
it's a bit confusing.
Confusing. Sorry.
Yeah.
You have doctor's handwriting.
So let me tell you some of the things that I noticed. First of all, I noticed that I really enjoy you reading this. Okay? That must mean something. I'm thinking to myself as you're reading it, I'm like, this is, for one, I'm thinking this is even better than when I read it. It's like I'm enjoying listening to your voice.
Okay.
I am appreciating, and I kind of want everyone to see if they can bring their mind to this, how well you see this, right? How connected your imagination is with this scene. Because as you read these sentences, I feel you seeing it. And that confidence of you seeing it makes me at ease, kind of. So it's like, do I see it all perfectly? When I was reading it, I didn't. But I'm also reading and being kind of critical and going, what, you know, am I in it or am I not in it? You know, what's going on here? Am I confused, not confused? But when you encompass it with your voice, I feel completely secure in the environment.
Okay.
It's very descriptive, right? So there, again, whether I can see it or not exactly accurately as I'm reading it, not so sure, but you are being descriptive and you are being focused about the scene. You have some difficulties about where Joey is and how he's seeing and the relationship between what he's seeing, et cetera, et cetera. So that issue of view is a little bit tricky, but I'm actually feeling like something is being described, which means that I'm doing the first thing that I mean, this is the number one rule, if we want to say, the number one rule that I'm basing on my incredible knowledge of human psychology is that one thing we know about when someone's reading a book is that they want to leave their world behind and they want to go into this world. That, I believe, is a truism. And when I listen to you read this, I feel like I go into your world. I think that you should be a reader for books. I would like to listen to you read. That was extremely nice for me.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's another thing that we get right at the beginning that is one of the absolutely most fundamental and crucial elements of our work. What happens at the very beginning? And anyone can jump in to talk about this. Mom, Mom, Joey cried, look, the vampire has brought her relatives. Mother stomped into the kitchen, a ladle dripping gravy in her hand. What nonsense, she stopped. What's happened there? I know it seems so obvious that you wouldn't even say what it is.
Which line is that again?
Just mother stomped out of the kitchen, a ladle dripping gravy in her hand. What nonsense, she stopped. Oh, wait, first we have Joey saying, Mom, Mom, Joey cried. Then the mother walks in. What do we have going on the page right there?
Action.
Yes. And action by what?
By dialogue.
I think it's showing the mother in the middle of an action, right? The ladle dripping gravy. She stopped. It kind of implies she was in the middle of something, and
and the bus crossed their porch. How did the bus? Who saw the bus cross the porch? Whose point of view?
You're all doing great, but I'm getting to something even more fundamental that I know that you probably think is obvious, but you would be so surprised how much material I read in which this is not the case. We have characters. We have two characters. I've said many times, characters are our storytelling tool. Characters in dynamic interaction, even better, characters that are differentiated, better, right? Two characters that seem exactly the same. We have a mother and a son. They're completely differentiated. They're even characterized, right? The mother behaves as a mother. The son behaves as a son. They are like real people on the page. I can see that I've stunned you all with my obviousness, right? Master of the obvious. You know, you're all like, yeah, of course. You will be surprised. Okay? I read a lot of work that is never going to go, I believe, and I'm sorry to say this, anywhere because there are not multiple characters on the page engaged in any kind of dynamic interaction. If there are multiple characters on the page, they are not, it's a kind of a complicated word, and so I don't like it very much, but differentiated. No matter how many characters you're working with, each must be differentiated. This is like, I never liked this phrase. I had, my mentor that talked about the hands and cutting them off and not writing the paragraph. He used to say, you have to know what a hack knows. I don't like that phrase because I don't like to ever imagine that I'm a hack, but I understand the truth of it. The person who's just writing a story for the money, a mercenary writer, they understand that when they write a movie script, you will never have seen a movie in which the characters are not differentiated. You just won't. For one thing, the actors themselves come out looking a certain way, and they don't look, this actor doesn't look like this actor. You also know that each of them are playing roles in a sense, even though it's not labeled over them what role they are. Some of them now, in a postmodern way are. So anyway, that's excellent, Ram.
Thank you.
That is, and you've been doing that for a while, Ram. You actually really have been getting characters on the page and getting, I kind of remember when you sort of took that on as a breakthrough moment. You're like, I'm just going to get these characters on the page and get them interacting.
Yeah.
Great. So keep doing that, but I want everyone else to I have to say again, like, people are miracles for one. Try to get them on the page, and then get them on the page in dynamic interaction with other individuals. This is what human beings are interested in, because I'm sure you've heard it said, but human beings are kind of self-involved. I'm more interested in my survival than maybe other people's survival, as is, depicted by my actions, right? So, but I can learn from other people. I learn from the choices other people make. I improve my survival by paying attention to the actions of others and then making choices for my own life accordingly. That's part of what stories do. The problem in this story is really relatively simple and will make for actually a huge revision. The character is passive.
Yeah.
So we have Joey. He looks, there's some issues with sort of concentrating that point of view, but you actually be surprised that point of view is something that's much easier to handle when you have your character in motion. Poetry in motion, character in motion. That means that they are, and if they're in motion, that means that they're motivated, right? They're motivated to do something. My fence outside my house is broken down. In the night, I saw that someone had broken in and gone through all my stuff. The next day, I went out and fixed the fence. I'm motivated by something to do something. So characters in motion mean both things. They're doing something, and they're doing something for a reason. That is a much more full character. It's easier to handle their point of view, and it's easier to handle the plot. Stories are generated from characters wanting something, but a story is not about them. But a story is not finally about them wanting something, sitting, passively wanting something. It's about what they're willing to do to get it. It's about what they're willing to do to get it, and what happens. Do they get it? I'll put that out to everyone. Is that a story? I want $1 million, so I walked outside and there it was. Is that a story?
No, it is not.
No, it's not. So it's about not getting it. I walked outside and I was surprised to learn that there wasn't $1 million out there. So instead I went to the bank. I said, hey, listen, I really think I deserve $1 million. And the teller said to me, what, is this a stick up? And I said, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, well, now the story has started. It's not, we as writers sitting at our desks thinking about things, that's a mistake. Getting characters in action, that works. Storytelling is not rocket science. It really is not, if we understand these basics. But this is a nice start. I really enjoyed hearing you read that, Ram. So
thank you. Thank you.
Arun, let's. I know that there's a couple of works. Ram, We might not get to that work from last week. We have 6 work, so, and I'm not sure what else we had. Abhinav, I think you said you had something from last week too. So let's see if we can.
Correct. And I see that the DVG has raised his hand. Please go ahead.
Otis, I'm back in your room after a long time. I was your student some years ago when you taught nonfiction for the first time.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm very much here, Chennai. I'm busy getting old. I'm now past 80. So that's what I've been doing. But
I still remember that class, actually. It was very, very educational for me. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Hello.
Did we lose Otis? Or...
No, I'm here.
Yeah, I think some audio issues most likely because I can't hear him.
Oh, he's
You can't
here.
hear me? I'm here.
No, I meant DVG. He's I don't think we can hear
I'm
him.
so sorry. I talked and I kicked my voice.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I apologize if my query is off topic. It's not about how to write or what to write. Not what to write, but it's about how to write, the craft of writing. If I have your permission, I would like to go ahead with that query.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I recently read somewhere that there's a huge difference between typing a story and writing it with pen on paper. It was an article. It made me think that there's a big difference, and typing an article takes you one remove away from your mind that is trying to say something. But the act of writing with a pen or a pencil on a piece of paper, he said there are so many other forces of the mind at work, and you get a lot more creative. Or if you were suffering from a block of writing, you tend to get unblocked, simply because the method of writing, putting pen to paper, makes the difference. And it does something to the brain. Of course, the writer took off and went into all sorts of scientific explanations that I didn't bother about. But basically, he made this point. And I would like to ask, if my query is clear at all, how true is this and what is the experience? And Otis, in particular, what you thought and how you write, I would like to know. And how you're always written, or has there been a change in this word processor era? And is there any difference? I would like others to come in and tell me. I'm intrigued by this difference that I read in that article. I hope my query is clear.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm endlessly fascinated with things like this. And of course, I will adopt the position of an instant expert on the topic, because that's what I do. I imagine that the way you work, I mean, the way we engage physically with things would absolutely influence how we did them. And one of the things that, I've actually heard this thing about, writing by pencil, and I'm not sure that it's sort of like, who's going to win, a polar bear or a shark? It's like, I mean, it sort of depends where they are, I guess, right? But it's like we constantly have these arguments about what is better. But I do think that there probably is a difference. And for me, if I'm thinking about it, if we're writing with a pen or a pencil, we're absolutely writing in this linear way, right? So we start with the beginning of the letter. Linearity is a huge influence. The idea of time and our relationship to time as we move through. Like as we move through, we're always creating the past. We always are basically living in a kind of present, and we're moving towards the future. So that linearity of writing with a pencil, I think, would probably have an effect on the way we think and the way we're writing, as opposed to typing, which we're still moving word by word, but when I type a word, I'm typing all over the place, right? So that physicality, I think, would probably change my mentality a little bit. I think the answer to, what works has traditionally been what works. So what works? What works?
If I may interject,
Yeah.
is there anyone in this group right now in this show who actually physically write with a pen and pencil instead of pen or pencil instead of typing? Is there anyone, or is
Not
everyone
me
typing these
any
days?
longer. Not me any
Pardon?
longer. What I do, however, do with a pen and paper is make notes, whether it is during work or for my, non-work writing. Sometimes I'll use pen and paper to make notes, and I find that a very different kind of an experience. I have not tried writing, actual writing pieces or drafts on pen and paper.
Your creative work you straight away type, do you?
Yes, I do. That's that's where I am now.
Oh, you might revise it. That's a different matter. But the first draft goes with on a keyboard.
So for I'm just going to say briefly, for me, I have never been able to spell. So if I have dyslexia, I'm not sure. I've never been diagnosed, but I always had a terrible time spelling. In college, they came up with those first little Macs that were like this, squares. And when I was like, oh, wait a second, because what I've done, because I can't spell, is I try to avoid words I can't spell. And so I'm always recasting sentences. I think that was very advantageous for me as a writer, actually, because it gave me a tremendous amount of fluidity. I am not locked into a linear pattern at all. I'm always trying to move things around. When I found cut and paste and spell check, that changed my life. And that was college. So that is in graduating in some early 80s, right? I mean, I've been doing that for a lot of years. When I type, I don't think a thing. I type as fast as I think. So anyway, it's just going to be different. But I think we better move on, because I have 6 pieces and I actually have a hard stop at 9 o'clock today. So, and obviously it's late for all of you and you want to start your week tomorrow, but keep grappling with it. I don't think it matters. Finally, writers write. So it's not writers choose how they write. It's writers, we want to be creating this thing. We need to get those words on the page. Whatever allows that to happen for you works. I definitely know of a lot of writers that say that they write a first draft and then they type it up. Anyway, grapple with that. But DV, are you writing every day? That's the real question. Did we lose DV? Okay.
Probably not, but we can move on, and we can come back to this discussion.
Okay, Arun, let's have you tell us a little bit about this piece, and then did you have enough time to sort of think about what section you like the best to read from?
Okay, so this, just to so let me first say that this is, you're talking about writing every day, right? So this is something I learned from another author called Neelam, who said, set yourself a weekly target of say 10K words, 10,000 words, and go for it, right? So I actually finished this book in 7 weeks flat. 70,000 words, 7 weeks, 10K words a week. Okay, I haven't just with this, as with the first piece that I'd sent, this piece is also very raw. I have not yet gone through it. This is my first draft. So I'll probably just read the first 3 paragraphs, because the context is that these characters are going through to a new city or a town, and I just wanted to kind of put the reader in that place. So that's how I kind of imagined it. So I'll just read it and then maybe we can discuss it. Lilith and the others waited till the sun was midway up to its zenith before venturing out of the inn. Lilith and Arjuna were impatient to get going, but Savyam had restrained them, saying that the longer they waited, the more crowded would be the streets and the easier it would be for them to blend in. Now, obviously, the context here is that they have sneaked into the city, searching for something or somebody. So that's the context. The city was buzzing with the hum of everyday activity. Traders called out their wares aggressively. Bullock carts, chariots, and horses jostled with people for space. The hya of the cart drivers and the clippity-clop of the horses added an interesting counterpoint to the shouts from the vendors. Street urchins ran in and around the carts and horses, coming perilously close to getting crushed as they played their little games. There was always the imminent danger of them coming under hooves or wheels, but they seemed to have an uncanny knack to move away at just the right moment. Each city has a distinctive smell, and it was the same with Larsa. The smell of flowers and incense, of garbage and urine, of smoke coming out of chimneys, of vegetables and meat and stale food all created a smell that was unique to the city. Dogs scurried about trying to get some of the food rotting away at the sides of the street. Some of them tried to dodge the stones chucked at them by the kids, yelping and howling as an occasional stone or clump of mud found its mark on them. So, the idea was to kind of immerse the reader in that space and to visually paint a picture of what was happening. So it was almost as if there was a camera that was following these guys as they were walking through the streets of the city. That's the feel I wanted to give.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that you do that. That was a wonderful reading. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I admire that about this piece. I think that so again, it might seem obvious, but I read a lot of pieces that do not center on the actions of character in place and time. And so remember we were talking about if we writing, particularly as it's read. If I write by pencil or I type, that might be slightly different, but the reader's experience is always like this. It's always linear. And what linearity does is create a sense of past, present, which is the thing that you're reading, and then future, the things that you're going to read. So you have that. You concentrated very much on keeping us in the present.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, underscore that not everything I read does that.
Okay.
So what happens if you think about the reader's experience, right, is always continuously in the present. But what I read might be the present, it might be the past. So I'm moving along like this, da, 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 da. My eye is looking at, this is the present story, but now I've gone into a backstory. Now I've gone back to the present story, but not to a future story. Now I'm moving all over the place. So there's a disjuncture between the way I am experiencing something and the way we all experience our lives. We do experience our lives in a linear way. In time, we're always living perpetually in the present. We think about the past. We anticipate the future, but we do not know what it is, right? But we're doing that always in the present. When we read something that's jumping back and forth, we see a disjuncture of these two kinds of ways of thinking. And that is, I'm not saying it is potentially confusing. So we know we as human beings live in one point of view. Jumping between points of view is unnatural. I'm not saying not to do it, but I'm saying understand that it's confusing for the human animal to experience that. The human animal also lives in linear time. If we write things that are disjunction that don't correspond to that go backwards and forwards and all of that stuff, we create the possibility of confusion for our reader. Take that into account. How do we do it if we feel that we must do it? How do we do it so we don't confuse the reader? Arun, you are not confusing me in regard to the timeline here.
Okay.
That is very, very positive.
Okay.
You're also definitely creating a sense of the city. this is a first draft. You're saying this is a first draft and you have it written. So how do we, and most people will say, there's a saying, Anne Lamott, we love to quote her because we get to use a dirty word. You have to write the shitty first draft, is what Anne Lamott says. So that goes back to this idea of writing 5 minutes a day. We have to find some way. If you have target numbers, that's great. That's not work for me because I feel bad about myself if I don't meet my targets, whereas I can definitely meet my 5 minutes a day, and I write longer than that and produce many more words than that now because of my confidence. But Anne Lamott says we have to write that shitty first draft. That means we have to get words on the page. That's all.
Yeah.
It means any words on the page, because once we get the words on the page, then we can start to work with it. The way I look at it is it's sort of like getting clay up from the earth, right? The first draft is clay up from the earth. We've just gotten something. Now we begin to work with it. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that the thing that you drug up is quite good, and it's focused, and you certainly have you've used that first draft to do something I think that I also do in first drafts, to develop the world, to explore the world, to think about and imagine the world. So I think you're doing everything that you should be with this draft.
Okay.
My criticisms here in the beginning are, I don't know who my point of view character is. So what you have on the page is you have a group. I go back to just think about your audience, and your audience is exactly the same as you, right? We live our life, maybe part of groups, but we live, our experienced life is as one person throughout the entirety of our existence. So how easily can we empathize with this collective?
Can I interject here, Otis, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to explain my thought process here. Okay, the way
Arun, I might stop you. Okay, I'm going to stop you.
No, absolutely.
Because when we as writers start to explain our methodology, I have found in my own experience that means spells trouble. If we,
I'm trying to explain it because I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way I write is, I actually visualize it as a scene in my mind, right? I can almost see it like a movie that plays out in front of me. Now, when I wrote this, the camera angle of that movie was as if it was hovering above the crowd as these three people were moving through. Now, that's all I wanted to tell you.
Yes, I absolutely get that. So, totally true. Let's go back to these fundamental ideas of the main thing that we know is that a reader wants to abandon their world and go into ours, right? So in my own world, I live in a single point of view. It's quite clear to me, right? I am motivated to do things like do my dishes and this, that, and the other thing. We want to take this reader out of this world that is very, it might be boring, but it's engaging in that it's actually my life. It's very clear to me what's going on, and I'm actually motivated to do these things kind of myself, but I don't really want to do them. I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to drive my kids to here, there, and the other thing. I don't want to do all that stuff. I want to do something that's more exciting, right? So we really have a, quid pro quo, this for that. I want to exchange one for the other. So is our best, Arun, we're talking about, you're writing something good. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's centered and I think it's focused. The question for us is, how do we make it better? Right? So you have characters that are a group. And then you have a narrator who comes in and expresses bias. So we have this group, Lilith and the others. That's in our first paragraph. You're doing a very nice job of differentiating your your voices. So that's also a good thing. Then the second paragraph is the city was buzzing. This is that narrator up above here. Mm-hmm. So you're asking me, a person who has so many things to do in my life, to go from this very engaged experience where I have to do the dishes, take my kids to school, get them back from school, do all this stuff, do my own writing, work on my own novel, all of those things. You're taking me out from there and you're putting me up here. Is it as engaging as it could be? Right? The quid pro quo is I'm taking you out of here, a life that's of extreme engagement to you, my reader, and to all of us, right? And now I'm putting you up in the sky where nothing's really going to happen to you. You don't really have a stake. What we usually do in...
Would the other way work around?
What we usually do in stories is I am compelled to engage in my own life. It's not very interesting, maybe. And what we usually do is we take the reader out of that world and we put him into a world that's more engaging than their world. That's the exchange that we want to make.
Would it? So it is a question. I mean, as you're talking, I'm again rethinking the scene, right? So would it work better if it's almost like you pan from a distance and then you move down into the crowd? So you set the scene and the world, and then you go into the crowd itself. So it's like the camera goes in.
You can do that, right? That's like, I mean, we see this in the movies. The movies, you know, they have that, we've seen this shot of South Beach, Florida so many times. I have anyway. You're panning in, it's gorgeous, the glittery buildings, and then
you get to the guy.
Then you're suddenly in this gritty place. So that's a great visual coming in. Maybe that works. I mean, we're talking about nuances here. If I did that, I would want to do it on purpose to draw the reader into this place. It certainly has been done. It's done in the movies. I think that there's a value to understanding that there's a difference between what movies can do. Every art has a different thing. Paintings, photographs, movies, writing. So we're working with writing. What movies do so well is they capture that shot of South Beach. I love it, you know, they do a great job. But when they get to the character, it's always this. I'm going to have the audience looks at the character. They might identify with the character, but even if we're talking about the pencil and the typing, it's the same thing. The action is me looking at that. With writing, the strength in writing, I believe that we can achieve is there's a camera that creates that frame. With writing, we can take the audience and we can put them in the body of the character. Not only outside. Now, instead of I'm looking at this person, instead I am this person looking at the world. I think that writers should do what we can do better because we are competing with movies too. So I can't use all those colors. I can't create that screen in that way. But what I can do better is I can take this reader and put them into that person's experience. And then now we have the reader in here, and this is the bargain. I am a person who's absolutely engaged in my own life, fascinatingly engaged. I have to do this, I have to do that. I'm going to write this novel, I'm going to finish that. It's going to make me famous, and I'm going to be happy forever, right? So I'm very engaged. But I'm taking the reader out of that, and I'm putting them into a more exciting experience. This goes back to Ram a little bit. You take the reader here, here's me. Yes, I'm already gazing out the window. Oh, I see trees waving, but now I'm seeing, zombies, but I'm still passive. Take me and put me into the experience of a person who's having an exciting experience, who's active, who's trying to get something, who's motivated, right? This is something that I can attach to. When we write that first draft, I'm going to say, everyone's first draft is amazing, okay? Your first draft is amazing. You wrote it. You have the words on the page, and now you can work with them. We want to make it better. So your piece is good. It will be read by some people. My piece, my first draft is good. My partner will read it. My mom will read it. They'll tell me that I'm smart. Great. But will anyone else read it? I want to get those other readers. I want to get all the people that will open up that book to open it and not be able to close it. And for that, I want to use everything to my maximum degree.
So what I'm going to do, Otis, is I'm going to, for next week, I'll submit this same piece, but I'll work on it with the feedback that you've given. And I'll try and, I think I already kind of know what to do with it now. I'll redo this and I'll send it back to you as next week's piece.
Yeah, and so notice something too. I think Lilith, you're starting with Lilith. She seems like she's going to be the main character, but she's lost in a group and we don't really experience her point of view. So you actually haven't taken me and put me into Lilith so that I'm experiencing the world from her point of view. Yeah. Not really. I'm looking at her. I'm looking at this group. In fact, the only point of view you really put me into is that of the narrator who's up above here.
Yeah.
And the narrator is not tangible, right? So again, in my life, the other thing that's true about my life is that I'm a physical person. I can be hurt. I can burn myself on the stove. I can experience joy and pain and all. I have a stake in my real life that is physical. It is not a metaphysical stake. You've taken me and put me into a character, a point of view that's only metaphysical. What are the stakes in the game? We have the phrase in writing, skin in the game. What is this person's skin in the game? They actually have no skin. They're a narrator.
Yeah.
Lilith, however, does. That's skin in the game. She has something to lose, her life, potentially, or, her hope, or her dreams, or whatever. She can feel pain, she can feel joy, all of those things, much more compelling to the reader. We want to pluck out of their lives and put into our story.
Got it.
Yeah. A tip for us all, I would suggest all of us, if we want to write a story about a narrator, then have that narrator have a point of view. But otherwise, we want to limit our narrator to focus on our point of view character. I would suggest for us who are starting, and for myself, stick with one, or at least know when you're in one and when you're in another. If you haven't developed a capacity to know when you're in one point of view or another, then you need to develop that capacity. Like Abhinav said, we have to learn how to do it. The most famous example of this is Pablo Picasso. They would say he could paint something that was like a trompe-l'oeil. It looked exactly like what you were looking at. He could do that before he painted abstract art. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That really helps. I will return to you. So the next piece is going to be the same, but I'll work on it and return it to you.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
And for all of us, consider what we do. I absolutely think of this way. I am not looking to create a product. I am looking to practice my skills. I'm looking to hone the way I imagine and think. That is always an enriching experience for me. I'm always engaged in a practice. The final product, who cares? That's an artifact of my work. That's an artifact of my life. So I appreciate what you're saying. Work on it. We're developing our skills.
Yeah.
This is like a dojo, if we want to think of it that way.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Otis, we have 24 minutes. Can we get 2 pieces in?
What time did we start?
Started about an hour and 5 minutes back.
Okay. Well, let's Madhavi.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Move it like that a little bit so I can see you. Tell us a little bit what you're doing here. You're writing a book review.
Yeah, I got this book from Indica for review. It's called What Does It Mean to Be an Indian? I thought the topic is very intriguing and it will be very exciting to read, but on the contrary, it was very difficult to finish. I kept getting distracted, went away from the book for some time. Took me 2 months to finish it. But
Okay,
since it was
that
such
is
an intriguing topic for me, I wanted to know what lay ahead, what was at the end of the book, what conclusions he's going to derive from it all. So I kept on reading. So that was my experience of this book.
okay. So the things that I'm just in keeping with our discussion as writers. If you're not engaged by the book, that's the fault of the writing. So I always put.
I don't know. Maybe I thought like these words like thinker and all these things that you have pointed out, they are the author's words. So
Yeah.
maybe I haven't reached that level in my life where I can relate to those words, so to say. But yes, it was a difficult read for me because I was equally confused.
Madhavi,
Yeah,
Madhavi, the fault is always with the author. Okay, so when we are two people. We are two people. When we're the author, we know that we're working hard to create the best, most clear work, that when we open up the page, the reader reads the first sentence and they're compelled to read the next one. They read sentence after sentence, they cannot stop. We are doing two things, right? We are being clear about what we're representing in the present moment, and we're making the reader anticipate what's going to happen in the next moment, but we surprise them every time. You know the place where I'm not surprised? This is my own life. I am not surprised, right? I'm doing this, and the thing that I might hope for this, that, and the other thing, but I'm not surprised about what happens next. In writing, we surprise, we create anticipation and surprise over and over again, sentence by sentence, and the reader cannot put our work down. That's our obligation, and we work towards that. And we do not complete that perfectly. Hemingway said, a work is never finished, only abandoned. I definitely believe in that. That has been true of my experience. We are not engaged in perfectibility, perfection in any way. We are simply struggling. So that's our job there. But on the reader's point of view, the reader never has any problem, okay? I want to reach every single reader. If I have failed to reach a reader, that's on me. It is not on the reader. The reader's a human being. They're a human being that actually opened up my book. So they've given me all that I need to succeed. The failure, if they should not complete it in 1, 2, 3 days, is mine. That is my failure. I am squandering an opportunity. So I just point that out. The problem is not yours, Madhavi. The problem is the book's. And then you should be pretty forthright about probably talking about that. I mean, exactly what you said. You know, I was interested to read this topic, but I found that I couldn't get through it. You know, that is, to me, that is telling me more about the book than anything else. You're a reader that was interested in the topic and you opened it. You did your part. The failure is to authors. Now, you're not going to find a lot of authors that will admit that as their failure. What a lot of authors will do is they'll say, you know what, I'm sorry that you're not able to understand my high erudition. I'm so sorry for you that you're. I have zero tolerance for that, personally. You know, this idea that there's some kind of basically an elitist structure where the writer is some elite that is speaking down to the population. In fact, it is exactly that distance that creates the problem for most writers. The writer and the reader are exactly the same. They enjoy the same things, and they can communicate with each other if they meet each other as equals. But they will never meet each other as equals if the writer feels that they're superior to their reader. This review, Madhavi, it does seem insecure on your part.
Yeah.
Your review,
That's the reason
right?
I've submitted it instead of, publishing it somewhere. So I was not sure whether this works.
I mean, again, I'm sorry that I seem to be so anti-writer, in my way, but like I point at the writer. Who made you feel insecure? I never want to make my reader feel insecure. I want my reader to feel absolutely secure. I don't want them to feel confused. I don't want them to feel like are they in the backstory, the front story? Confusion is the big enemy of our writing. I want clarity above all, and the way I write is to achieve clarity. And then secondly, I want to take that reader and I want to keep them. I want to write a sentence. I want the reader to anticipate what's going to happen. I want to draw them through sentence by sentence so that they're compelled. They cannot put that book down. They keep turning the pages, and at the end, they feel surprised and they cannot see the world the same way again. That is my only objective. This writer has made you feel insecure, and there are reasons for that. I, in my experience, could probably outline what those reasons are, but you might not have that experience to be able to sort of abstractly outline what the problems are with the book. Okay, that's just because I have experience doing that. That's been my job for many, many years. But you do have the truth of your experience, and I would encourage you to feel secure in your experience, right? It's like, there's this thing like problematizing, right? The author problematizes the reader. Like, if there's a problem with reading this book, it's yours. But I don't see it that way. I see it as belonging to the author. And I actually noticed that in this review, there's a point where you write, and it's sort of like you're letting your true feelings out. You write, throughout the course of the book, the author continues his monologue, focusing on the religious practices of followers by Indians, and tries to build his case on our hypothetical. Oh, sorry, no, that's not the part I wanted to read.
Maybe the last line you could say was.
Otis, can I
Yeah.
come in with a comment? Madhavi, if you
Yes.
don't mind,
Sure.
if I may.
Yeah, definitely. Please go ahead.
No, so I just felt when I was reading that first page, right? I felt that the third paragraph, Otis, if you could just go back one page, the third paragraph where you talk about, the author is looking at India through a Western lens, If that had been the beginning of the review, it would have grabbed me, because then I'm already hooked into, okay, so that's what the author is trying to say, and then let me read it. The first paragraph, the way it's written, tells me it's non-academic, non-fiction, but I still am searching for what it is. What is the book about?
Well, I agree with you, Arun. I mean, one of the ways to approach this, approach any review, is to figure out what the thesis is. But in a lot of books, it might not even be clear what the thesis is. So having a clear thesis in a book is one of the responsibilities of the author. It seems to me, and then creating a thesis actually creates the drive of the book when we're dealing in nonfiction. So having a clear thesis creates both the audience and the drive for the book. It may not have been clear in this book. I haven't seen this book. One of the things I thought in reading this is I would have liked to have seen maybe the table of contents to see if there was any kind of organization to this book at all. But I'm actually trying to get to a level. I do want to talk about a level a little bit below that. There are some strategies if you feel compelled to write this review of this book. But I think that the review is already written and that you had a lot of trouble getting through this book, right?
So that's what my query was. How do we write such a review?
How do you write such a review? Wait,
Yeah.
I'm just looking for this section. So this is the sentence I wanted. he argues that there is a disconnect with experience and lack of self-realization on the part of the Indians as a culture. So when I read a sentence, I think that that's probably accurate. And then you use the word monologue, focusing on the religious practices. It's the author confronts us with a host of problems and shortcomings that Indians need to address. Like you can, like I can feel in that that's a person up here saying you need to do this. It's didactic. You're not going to reach your reader through being didactic and telling them that they're a problem that needs to be fixed. I don't believe so. That is not an argument that a reader is going to be open to, and it does not suggest that the author understands that they want to gather their audience and even has a sense of equal respect for them. I would write about your own experience. You know, it was, you know, it seems to me that you were unclear about what the thesis was. It's unclear to me what point this author was trying to make. I felt often confused. While the author said that this book was non-academic, you know that it's from Macbeth, methinks she doth protest too much. If you're telling everyone that it's a non-academic book, that's sort of suggesting that any lay reader should be able to read it, right? But that might not be the case. I would encourage you to write a review as a reader and just acknowledge and feel secure in your own experience with the book. The end result might be this book may work for some, but I struggled through it. If it's a topic, right? If you have a book that did not work for you, but it was a topic that did work, I think that there's a chance to suggest a book that did work for you on the same topic.
Can we say
right?
that?
Right. So like this is an issue. This is something I am interested in, and I was open to reading this book. It did not work for me. However, a book on a similar theme, so-and-so's did work for me. It connected with me as a person, and it showed me both, gave me a sense of who I was and where I might go, something like of that nature. And I think that really works. Anyway, I really encourage. It's hard to encourage you to feel more secure about your experience when it seems like the author here made you feel insecure about your experience. And also, it seems like the topic was sort of a problematization of Indians, which strikes me as a little bit off from the get-go, particularly if you expect an Indian audience. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, so that's what my first impression was. Probably it was written for the Western reader who doesn't resonate with Indian culture. But ultimately, it turned out that it was addressing the Indians living in India as well.
Okay.
And yeah, so there were questions raised with no answers to them, and a general direction which we should, as Indians, pursue. Just saying that we should learn from our experiences and we should be able to the process of it's an endless process of dealing thoughtfully with experiences. That was the inference of the book.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Otis, time check. Do you want to continue with this review, or do you think you'll have time to do the fourth one?
I think we better let's try and I don't know if okay, this is need to think. Vandana, maybe? Is she here?
Yeah, she's here, but is this?
I think this is her piece. I think this is her piece.
Okay,
It's very,
she's an attendee, not a
it,
panelist.
it is very helpful to have the names and titles. I have them so that I can put those things together. Where's a? Oh, okay. Can we talk, Sweta? Let's take a quick look at your piece, please. Can you read it? Can you read a section of it that you think is good?
Okay. The dream car, crossing the line. The sage had crumpled eyes.
Oh, okay, in the beginning. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The sage had small crumpled eyes like a folded white cloth. His hair was long, white, and matted. He had a curved nose like a bird's beak. His lips were dark and cracked. His forehead was folded and marked with sacred ash. He looked like he was very ancient. He was bent over a stick that was curved and made of rosewood. He was carrying a rosewood begging bowl. He was wearing a single-piece loincloth. His hands were shaking. His voice was loud and angry. I will kill myself if you don't step out of the line and give me arms with the respect I deserve. I may not be able to pronounce the names correctly because they are Cambodian names. Niang Seda trembled, and the basket of fruits she was holding in her extended arms almost fell down. Luckily for her, she held to the basket of freshly plucked pineapples, apples, mangoes, and watermelon. It was a heavy cane basket which her husband, Prem Reed, had himself shaped and sculpted. He would create these baskets, 10 at a time, each week to give alms to the passing sages. The sage once again tried to enter the hut, but the minute he took the next step, a line of fire flared up from the ground, preventing him. What's this magic? He yelled at the girl. She took a step back and, biting her lower lip, tightening her hold on the fruit basket. She was wearing a single piece saffron sari, jasmine flower garlands, and gold adorned her neck, earlobes, hair, and wrists. Though she was dressed in the manner of a forest dweller, it was apparent that she was a princess.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got Sweta. Let's dig into this a little bit. Okay, why did you think that this was good? Why did you choose to read this as opposed to some other parts?
Because I sort of liked writing the beginning actually. When I wrote the beginning, I actually loved the end also, which you were against as such. But I mean, for me, that was the best part because that was also, in fact, when I was initially thinking, when you initially said you have to read what you like, I was thinking I'll read the end. But now I've just switched to the beginning for some random reason. But the reason I liked the end a lot was that it was a different. So this is obviously the Cambodian version of the Ramayana. So the end I felt was my version of the Ramayana, and so I wanted that, and that was there more in the end of the last part, where I sort of my reading of the different Ramayanas over the years, especially Yoga Vasishtha, convinced me that. Convinced me of a particular way of thinking about the Ramayana, and that was reflected only in the last bit. But of course, I didn't read that out now. I'm sorry, I made that mistake.
Okay,
but I liked writing the beginning. I liked writing the beginning.
Okay, so you liked writing the beginning, and guess what?
Yeah.
I liked reading the beginning. So you liked it, and I liked it. Now it sounds like you had some kind of, I'm going back to this sort of intellectual idea about writing the ending. So that's an intellectual idea, which is interesting to you, but did not engage me as much. What I like about this beginning is you have this sage, and I'm just going to, I mean, maybe everyone knows this story, but I did not. But we have a sage. I do not know that this sage is some kind of demon, right? But we have a serious conflict of two characters, an antagonist and a protagonist. We get the antagonist first, and then we get the protagonist right here in a dynamic interaction. And I am right there in the moment all the time. So these are the fundamental things, right? That I think we have to base our work on. This should be a base, and then from this, we then move higher. okay? But if we don't have this base, we do not have a story that's going to be engaging to the reader, no matter how much we're personally interested in it. Our personal interests are not a story. They might be a topic for a nonfiction book where you say, this is my interest, and and then someone else says, well, that's my interest too. They're motivated by their own interests and therefore read your book to add to it. But stories are not like that. Stories engage everyone in the world, and they engage everyone in the world because they deal with universal issues of struggle, individual struggle against forces of antagonism that are motivated. So, but let's talk. So now I say that this first part is good. How do we raise it up? This is the question. What you have is great. It's a great base. Now I'm going to give you some higher level discussion about how this becomes better. Okay, this first paragraph focuses on the antagonist. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay, because the second paragraph gets us to the protagonist. You do not wait. Having paragraphing by antagonist, protagonist, or reverse it, protagonist, antagonist, and paragraphing that way, I think is a very useful tool for us as writers because it helps provide clarity for the reader. They see visually it's this person represented in this paragraph. They see that there's a continuity of this person represented in this paragraph. Does everyone understand that? That helps the reader. Clarity above all. Confusion bad, clarity good. But the other thing is, I actually like to think of it as a continuum. So we want to be clear, right? But we don't want to be so clear. We don't want to be boring. So we need to have excitement, and we need to have clarity. Those two things meet in a kind of sweet spot in the middle. So you have both of those things. You have some conflict between these two characters. But let's look at this paragraph. In this first paragraph, you'll notice that all the verbs are static. Action, dynamic action, is more interesting than stasis. Our world, whether we know it or not, is filled with dynamic action. We don't necessarily perceive it, but it's there. Dynamic action intrigues us. A lion moving across the steppe, in my view, is much more engaging to me than simply a lion sleeping under a tree, okay, as an example. So this first paragraph has, the sage had small, his hair was long, he had curved, his lips were dark, he looked like, okay, he looked like is a special case, and I want to get back to that. He was, I'm going through them, he was, his hands were, was loud, right? So all of those are to be verbs pretty much, right? They're to be verbs, and to be verbs are a condition of stasis, of being. Having active verbs, strong verbs, would improve this first paragraph. The sentences are all very much the same. Having some variety in the sentences would also improve it. Now, I'm just going to, for those of you thinking about point of view and going back to, I think, Arun and maybe some others, we were talking about the movies. So look how I stop on this sentence. He looked like he was very ancient. Can anyone tell me why I'm saying that that's a problem with point of view?
Is that same camera hovering over the scene, kind of?
Right. Where's the camera? Who's seeing that? Right? It's drawing attention to the fact that I have no idea. Right? I actually was imagining, like, in a way I'm forestalling. I'm imagining that it's, I don't know how to say, Nenga Seda. I'm imagining that another person is witnessing him. But now when I get, he looked like he was very ancient, I wrote to whom? Because when he looked like something, that means there's someone who's a viewer. Who is that viewer, I wondered? I go, bingo, point of view problem. When I'm reading this paragraph, I adopt a point of view. I'm actually adopting the point of view of the protagonist. The sage was small, had small and crumpled eyes. I'm seeing that from the protagonist's point of view, right? But then when I get to, he looked like he was very ancient, I'm like, who thinks that? Who is thinking that thing? It throws me out of the story. It throws me out of my point of view. Where I was secure at first, I am now insecure. I'm only digging into that, Swetha, because I want to make a point to how our language affects the reader's consciousness, basically. But, you know, this is Swetha, I'm giving you very high-level comments here. Your paragraphs, look at this paragraph. Neng said trembled and the baskets of fruit she was holding extended. This is a small thing. Her arms almost fell down. Okay, I'm going to act out a basket almost falling down. Okay, not the most dynamic thing. This is a little trick that I've adopted. I don't do things in degrees. I don't do almost fell down. I either have them do it or not do it. I want to have actions. She dumped the basket of fruit is much more, and look at it, it's much more visually appealing to us than almost dumping the basket of fruit, which is hard for me to understand. It's a tiny issue. Don't take it too seriously. But the paragraphs, you'll notice that these paragraphs both end the second paragraph and the third paragraph both end with stasis. Okay, we have a nice description of her. We have her having the baskets, but then we end with the baskets are heavy cane baskets, which her husband had himself shaped and sculpted. He would create these baskets 10 at a time each week to give alms to passing sages. We're actually, remember, we're moving like this, right? In the present, in the present, in the present, present action, and we actually end that paragraph somewhere else. Mm-hmm. It's a small thing, but it ends up adding up. The next paragraph is the same. We have her, what is this magic? They're talking to each other. And then though she was dressed in a manner of forest dwellers, it was apparent that she was a princess. We've ended with a static element again. When we form our paragraphs, I would suggest to everyone, start with action, go to something else, and end back in the action to transition us to the next paragraph. It's a small thing, but these are the things that we can accomplish. But we need to be able to differentiate things in our writing. We need to be able to differentiate between when we're writing characters in action and when we're writing static narration. Static narration might be useful in the middle of a paragraph, but we want to be able to transition the reader always moving forward. This is our objective. I read this sentence, I'm anticipating what's going to happen next, and I want to read it. And then I'm surprised by that, what happens. And Swetha, you're doing that for the most part. These are just little, very high-level issues that will improve this work. And then, of course, I'm going to suggest to you that you stick with the action, the protagonist and the antagonist action, and realize that that's what the reader is most interested in. And the other work, you know, as you're writing out the story and things like that, and going into these static moments, this exposition basically, that's static for the reader. Figure out, it's important to you, figure out how to dramatize it. That is the higher level work that we do as authors. We want to write about something, but we are dramatists. We are not expositionalists, if that's a word. Okay. That was a joke. I'm making a point. Be funny. Okay, thank you for that laugh. Abhinav, is that
I think we are, yes, we're at the top of the hour. It's 10:05 p.m. here, and I think it's what, 8:35 a.m. for you. I think we still have a couple of pieces pending. One is mine and one is Ashwini's. I think that is pending for a couple of weeks or longer. So let's do one thing when we meet next Sunday. Let's cover these two pieces first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we can cover these two pieces and then we can take a look at whatever comes next. So, folks, those who have joined for the first time, again, to reiterate, this is a platform for you to submit short pieces of writing that you want to get feedback on. Fiction, non-fiction, doesn't matter. Make it 800 words in length, double spaced, put it in, if you write it in a Word document, export it as a PDF, send it to Otis, and put your name on it, put a date, put a title, and he'll send you his feedback, and then be here on Sunday when that piece is discussed. And the rest you can, we'll put this video up on YouTube, and you can watch the previous 65 plus episodes.
Right, and I think we'll probably meet next week, and then I think we'll probably be off until the new year.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, next Sunday when we meet, we can try and go a little longer to complete any backlog that we have, so that there's nothing pending as we head into the new year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Sorry if I didn't get to your piece, and sorry, Ashwani, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize. I think it was 2 weeks, so I sort of lost track of the pieces we haven't done. Out of sight, out of mind. Pranshu, I think we also have up, so I'll try and do good work in maybe putting them. What are they, like planes on the on the tarmac? I forget what you call that.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Otis, and thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yeah. Very helpful.
Thank you, Abhinav.
Thank you.